Hello and welcome to the SRA webinar on Training for Tomorrow, our new initiative which is aiming to look at and potentially reform and change our system for the education and training for solicitors. Broadly, this is very much the aim of Training for Tomorrow is in terms of the lawyers that we, the SRA, regulate, which is, by and large solicitors, that we are actually giving those lawyers who are either practicing today or are training or in the process of qualifying as lawyers, so students and trainees, that we are equipping them with the skills and the level of competence needed in order to be successful practitioners for the future. That's very much in, the interest of those practitioners. It's also primarily for us in the public interest to ensure that the public receive good quality legal services. So what we have in terms of the structure of this webinar, first of all, we will be looking at how we got here, the background, the context, the process which has led to this point here and the launch of Training for Tomorrow. Secondly, I'll then take a bit of time to explore with you and, very much I hope in dialogue with you about our current thinking. This is very much thinking. It is not at the moment a set of cast iron proposals or anything like it. It is a direction of travel. It is where we think that we need to go, and that is very much a journey which we want to undertake with you as stakeholders, as people who are participating in this process, inputting into it, and during 2014 we won't just be developing our policies, we'll also be running a variety of stakeholder engagement events so that you can actually input into this process. And that kind of leads on to the third point, which is what part you play, the things that you can do now and over the coming months going into 2014 to actually interact with us and input into this process and contribute. So first of all, the first section here of this, how did we get here? Now, this is very much around where we are in terms of the process that we took to get here. And before I actually start to go into these slides in detail, it'd be useful also to know a bit about your background. So a poll will be appearing on your screen, which you can do, which is we'll be asking basically, are you a solicitor? Question, you can answer obviously yes. You could answer no, I'm a consumer of legal services, a client or member of the public. I could say I'm a member of another regulated profession, a barrister or a legal executive, for instance. Or I could say no, I am what we've termed as an LPC graduate, in other words, a trainee or someone studying or someone looking for a training contract but who hasn't got one yet. So if you could have a look at that poll, and very grateful if you could respond to that. And while you're looking at that, I will start on this slide, which is very much around the process we took to get to this point. Now, the SRA is set up, as you will know, under the Legal Services Act, which changed the regulatory landscape. The Law Society effectively kind of put its regulatory function into a new body with new governance to be an independent regulator in the public interest. That is the SRA. And as part of that, we've been working with the Legal Services Board and with all the relevant stakeholders in the profession and the public to actually develop our regulatory role. We have developed an approach which is very much based on focusing on outcomes, on good quality legal services, and on addressing risk. That approach, we now want to carry that approach through into one of our really key areas of regulation, which is legal education and training. Legal education and training has actually remained relatively unchanged for a long period. The last fundamental review was over 40 years ago with the Omrod report, and although since then we've had things like the legal practice course replace the old Law Society finals, and we have had the introduction of a CPD scheme which has remained unchanged for many, many years, broadly there has been no fundamental review. We recognised that a fundamental review was needed, as did the Legal Services Board and our fellow regulators, the Bar Standards Board and SILEX, Legal Executives Institute of Professional Standards. For that reason, those three regulators I've mentioned, we banded together and we tendered for an independent provider of a report. That report was prepared for us by the UK Centre for Legal Education, who put in a very effective bid and drew in expert academics, many of them with a strong record in practice as well, in legal practice, and the support of researchers and analysts. They've examined a huge variety of evidence, and they have analysed that very thoroughly in a report which actually highlights a lot of strengths and weaknesses of the current system. It's not just about weaknesses, it's not just about things that are to be addressed. One of the key findings of the report is that actually there are a lot of strengths, a lot of things that we can be very happy with, both as practitioners or as regulators, about the current system. It is training solicitors broadly to a very good standard. However, at the same time, there are a lot of other drivers and issues which point to change, and I'll be coming on to that shortly. But just to finish off this slide, what I would say is that in terms of that report, although it's commissioned by the three regulators and very much within the purview of the Legal Services Board as well, each regulator is going to respond to the report in its own way, but we are liaising very closely with the other regulators on common issues. So where there are matters which we would share or overlap, or where we think there are common standards, for instance, to do with defining the nature of professional legal work, we will obviously be liaising very, very closely with our fellow regulators to ensure that wherever possible we are coordinated and united. Now, what I'm going to do now, we should be able to publish the results on screen of the first poll, and hopefully if this is appearing on your screens now, we'll see that there's a significant number of solicitors here, which is very good to see. We're delighted that the profession is involved in that way, so that's great. And what I'll do now is move on to the next slide. As part of this slide, I'm going to ask you a second poll question, which will be appearing on your screens. Broadly, seeing what you think about how much you've been engaged with this so far, and is to ask you, have you read the policy statement that we have put out, which is called Training for Tomorrow, and is available on our website. So if you could answer yes or no to that, and we'll be taking the count of that poll shortly. So while that poll's in progress, I'll go through this next slide, which is very much about the drivers for reform, apart from the LETR, apart from the Legal Education Training Review report itself. And as I've mentioned, in some senses that report was reassuring. It indicated that there are high standards of training and education, but also highlighted a number of areas where we need to reform. Those areas where we need to reform, or at least think about, a serious consideration of a new way of doing things, actually fits in very well with the changing context of legal legal practice, and particularly legal practice for solicitors, because the community of providers that we regulate, which includes obviously firms from the high street through to the city, and also includes in-house legal practice, has been affected by unprecedented levels of change. There are new business structures which are permitted under the Legal Services Act. Those are likely to grow. People are likely to look increasingly for the provision of legal services in new ways, and those new business structures reflect that. At the same time, we have seen the globalization of the profession in a tremendously successful way in terms of the uptake of legal services from clients worldwide, corporate clients by and large, for our larger law firms. And of course that has meant that our law firms are leading, our largest law firms are now not just national names, they are global names with presence in, throughout the world, and are, increasingly providing legal services, in developing economic areas, for instance, such as the Far East and South America. So that globalization trend is very much, again, affects the way that solicitors practice, and it particularly affects the sort of skills and competence that they need, the skills to be a solicitor. Another factor is what we've got down on the slide as this rather long-looking word, commoditization. In other words, clients looking generally for domestic legal services, such as conveyancing or personal injury, which are very much a process-based, transaction or legal matter going forward, and where clients are looking to, instruct someone, not on the basis of the person that they know on the high street, perhaps, but more someone that they may contact via telephone or the web, and maybe using a national provider who has reduced is perhaps the wrong word, but has rendered the legal process into a series of stages, and the actual product, as it were, becomes a commodity. Now, this form of legal practice obviously is covered by our standards completely. It's done to a high standard. It's a good standard of work, and it's excellent for the consumer by and large. But again, it has impacts on the way that solicitors work and the sort of skills that they need to deploy. In many commoditized services, solicitors are working very closely with paralegals, non-solicitors, who may be performing quite expert roles within the process. And again, we need to think about the skills needed to deliver legal services in that context. So that's a quick roundup of the way that we are in a situation of unprecedented change. Most of these changes have come in the last 20 or so years, and the pace of them is currently accelerating. So it really is vital that we equip solicitors with the skills to be able to deliver legal services, good quality legal services, in future, where we are looking to a position that will have changed even more radically than it is now. We need to think ahead and almost project the trajectory of change and develop the competence requirements that we need from the profession, the skills we want solicitors to have in order to meet those challenges and the position in the future. And finally, I'd say on this that, as I mentioned, we are an outcomes-focused regulator, very much focused on the actual results and the provision of legal services, the quality of the end product. We're also focused on risk in terms of targeting our regulatory actions to the areas of most risk. We want to provide freedom in practice for those who are providing good outcomes and are avoiding risk. We do not want to put unnecessary or arbitrary controls on people. And we want to allow for flexibility. So all those factors, or all those elements of our kind of strategic or regulatory style, as it were, are very much brought to bear on the reform of education and training. And as we go on through the other slides, you'll see how this could actually begin to change the way that we regulate in terms of education and training. So I'm going to now present the results of the second poll. Thanks very much. I had quite a few votes on this, and it's very encouraging in the sense of showing, and hopefully this will be coming up on your screens, that over half of those participating today who have voted anyway have read the policy statement. For the numbers who've not read it, not to worry at all, because you can both. We will be going through a lot of the content of it in this webinar, and also you have the opportunity to read the policy statement itself on our micro website. The details will be there at the end of this presentation, or also to look at other sources of information on that website, such as areas of content on the website which outline the various parts of our program. So I will go on now to look at broadly what Training for Tomorrow is about. We are intending radical reform of legal education and training for solicitors. We are looking to underpin that reform by key principles, so that this will be very much a strategic change. Rather than making particular changes to particular parts of the system, change will be holistic, and it will be underpinned by principles that actually permeate throughout the whole of that change. Our critical focus is on ensuring good standards of legal practice. That's what we're here for, is to ensure those standards. And in terms of Training for Tomorrow, we ensure those good standards through the competence of those that we regulate. The competence of the lawyer, the ability of the solicitor to practice and deliver legal services is clearly the most fundamental thing. My personal opinion is the most fundamental thing of all to whether that solicitor can provide a good quality service. It's important that solicitors do things in a business-like manner. It's important that they have the right legal skills and the right interpersonal and business skills to deliver legal services effectively. And part of that effectiveness is, of course, relevance. There is no use in determining the standards that solicitors should be practicing to, or the skills that they need, by how things were in the past, maybe many years in the past. We need to look at what things are like now and the sort of services that will be delivered in the future, and make the standards and requirements that we have relevant to those. And along with the relevance goes flexibility, the ability to match the huge variety of circumstances I've described, from all those solicitors on the high street who are providing fantastic services to clients in their local area, through to national providers of services and to global providers of corporate legal services, and to in-house legal practice as well. And of course, a large proportion of the profession, an increasing proportion, is practicing in-house. So we need to address all those areas. Our standards are going to be high, but they're also going to be flexible. And we believe the outcome of this, the result or the natural corollary of it, will be that consumers and the public will have a very high level of confidence in the profession, and will perceive it as a profession that they trust and whose reputation is enhanced. And that is something that we are very focused on. Training for Tomorrow is not about any kind of dilution or dumbing down of standards at all. It is very much about an enhancement and a securing of standards that are high, relevant and flexible, and standards that give consumers confidence in solicitors. So that's our kind of overall theme. I'll now move on to a slide which is really an attempt to summarise the policy statement that's there on our website into kind of 5 main bullet points. Really, if the policy statement had to be distilled into a few words, into the length of a tweet, then this would be what it would be. A first theme, as I've already mentioned, is really this about the standard of those entering the profession, the standard of qualification, so that a person knows exactly what they want to aim for when they want to be a solicitor, the standard they have to achieve, and they have to demonstrate that they have achieved that standard, and also a standard which also shows what clients and the public can expect from solicitors. They should be a mirror image of each other. Part of that, then, is very much about, once someone is qualified, how is that standard maintained? We currently have a continuing professional development, or CPD, scheme, which has been around for many years, and the fact it's been around for many years itself naturally leads to the question that we need to review it, and we need to see that it is up to date and is still effective and relevant in the modern legal services context. Then we have the theme or key sort of aim of Training for Tomorrow of encouraging flexibility. We want the provision of training and education to reflect both the needs of those who want to need that training, those who would like to qualify or to continue to maintain their competence, along with the innovation of training providers to come up with new ways of teaching and learning. And at the moment, we have a strong framework around this, a robust framework, but it can, in some ways, be seen as a bit rigid. We want to increase its flexibility while retaining its robustness. And a critical part of all this, of course, is engaging with and particularly listening to our stakeholders. A personal view from me is that word listening is the most important word on that whole slide. We are very much taking this forward as a process in which we are engaged with our stakeholders, and it's vital to have your input. Without that, we can't succeed, because education and training is always about a partnership. It's always about a partnership between those who are learning and developing and progressing their careers, those who are providing training and education to them, and the business context in which legal services are being provided. And without that partnership, without the active involvement and buy-in of all our stakeholders, then our reforms will be one-sided. A final theme, which is perhaps the least important, but is the one that's coming through in terms of time first, removal of unnecessary regulation. A lot of our current regulation is quite prescriptive and detailed. We want to remove that. We want to concentrate on principles, and we want to focus on the things that actually need regulating. So that is very much a first step of our programme, is, as it were, to clear the way so that you can see the wood for the trees in terms of what the education system is actually about. So that's an overview of what Training for Tomorrow is about. It's a 100-word summary or whatever of the policy statement. And I'm now going to take each of those sort of 5 themes and unpack them a little bit. In terms of, first of all, we're talking about ensuring that those entering the profession are competent, that they meet our high standards. So it's a standard for entry to the profession, and it's based on the actual skills and knowledge that solicitors need, either that they're already using or that they may need and they're not yet using. And we're going to do field work over the next few months, which will actually pull out a really clear picture of this skills and knowledge that's actually needed in practice. And for that, we will be using that information as an objective, evidence-based starter. And the other thing about this is that we also need a standard which can actually be assessed. An acid test of such a standard is that it will be assessable. And again, we will be engaging with you to talk about methods that this standard could be assessed by. Now, a couple of examples of how standards can work. I don't expect you to read through these in detail now, but as I say, you're free to download the presentation at the end and also to read through these, and by all means come back, particularly through our website, as I'll explain later, with comments and thoughts. The first of these that you'll see is an attempt to express a level of competence. In other words, to describe what competent behaviour looks like in terms of a level of skill or a level of expertise. So as I say, don't read all that now, but have a look at it and maybe take it away and have a think about it. And the second slide, about which we're going to run a little poll, is around the range of skills, the range of areas of competence, broadly the breadth of what a solicitor actually has to do. And we're going to publish a poll now, which is very much about this list, which has been actually generated through the roadshows that we've run. And what it's going to do is basically ask you which of these you think is the most important in terms of critical thinking, legal research skills, technical legal knowledge, interpersonal skills, ethics and professional values, business awareness and financial competence. And you will also have an option to click Other if you think some other factor is the most important thing in terms of the range of skills that a solicitor needs. So that poll is running now. And while you're thinking about that and answering it, I will now move on to look at what we call continuing competence, or what is broadly known as continuing professional development, or CPD. This is broadly an area where we are very keen to fundamentally review this and look at whether the current scheme is working and what we need to do to change it if there are areas where it isn't. One thing that's really key about this is that the current system is based on hours served. We don't have a lot in terms of what you need to do within those hours, but we are very clear that every solicitor should be doing 16 hours of continuing professional development training every year. Now, one thing that we would like to ask you, and I think another poll is due to come up. I think first of all, what we'll do is we'll publish the results of the poll on slide 10. So we'll just get those up now. If those could be, will appear on your screen, and we will see what the broad thinking is around those. I'll just talk you through those for a moment, and those results should be there now. And I think what it's showing is that pretty much all of those are felt to be pretty important. But I think on the figures that I've got, anyway, the leading one is ethics and professional values. And I think, personally, speaking as Tim Pearce, I would very much agree with that in terms of what defines a professional, what defines a solicitor, is actually their adherence to a code of professional conduct and ethics. So moving on to the poll around this slide, the continuing professional development slide, it's really, the question is, would you like the SRA to still prescribe requirements in terms of hours served, or what we would call inputs in education language? Do you think that we should still prescribe an hourly, in terms of hours, an annual requirement for CPD, or do you think we should move away from doing that and find some other way of ensuring that the standards are met? So you have two simple options, yes and no. So that poll will be appearing now, and please do respond to it. While you're responding to that poll, I will move on to say a little bit about flexibility and diversity. That we aim, as I mentioned, to be less prescriptive and allow more freedom to both employers and training providers to provide training and education opportunities in the ways that they think the market requires, as long as it meets our standards. And part of this also is that we believe that if there is a greater diversity of pathways, we hope it will help high-caliber candidates from a wide variety of backgrounds. This is, again, not about diluting standards, but it's about altering the way that the standards work so as to help, wherever possible, the profession to become a true meritocracy. Those meritocratic values permeate the profession already, and we want that to, as much as possible, translate into fact. So, broadly, that is our approach. We believe in flexibility, we believe in diversity, and we believe that those things are entirely compatible and indeed enhance high standards. And now, finally, in terms of these sort of themes or elements of the Training for Tomorrow program, removal of unnecessary regulation. We have a consultation actually which is coming out on this now. It's the consultation is something you can look at on our website, and it's very much around removing processes and requirements which are over-detailed, which in some cases, in terms of pre-qualification training, actually duplicate what education providers such as the universities already do, and also clarifying that the training contract, that our role in the training contract is regulatory rather than contractual, as it were, that we want to focus on our regulatory role around the quality of training. So it won't change the actual content of what a trainee is required to do, or the standards they need to be trained to. All that is completely unaffected, but what we are doing is realigning the training contract so that so that we are performing our role effectively as the regulator. So that's very much our current thinking about removing unnecessary regulation. And I'm now able to publish the poll in terms of the idea of should we retain an hours basis for continuing professional development, and you'll see that there is it's quite nicely split. There are a fair number of voters for each, but there's a significant majority in terms of retaining a level of prescription, for instance, an hours requirement around CPD. So that's very, very interesting to see, and also interesting to see that there are, a variety of views on it as well. So now we're going on now just to look at, in terms of what's going on now and ahead. We already have, as I say, the removal of unnecessary regulations referred to as by our chief executive when he first presented our policy statement in October as the bonfire of the regulations. So that consultation is very much around the themes that I've mentioned, focusing particularly on the qualification process and its unnecessary requirements, and on the training contract, and actually refocusing the training contract but not changing its actual substantive content. Hard on the heels of that consultation, and all these consultations will run for 12 weeks, we have probably appearing towards the end, I would say, of January next year, an initial consultation on CPD. This will be very much presenting options as to what you, our stakeholders, think is required. So it's almost like the little poll that we've just done in terms of, hours requirement or not. Those kind of things in terms of options, we'll be presenting those. That's actually just the first consultation, because once we've got the results of that and taken your views into account, we'll then develop up some worked up actual proposals which will be far more specific, and we will be consulting on that in the autumn. We will also be doing, over the next few months, we'll be doing research to understand the competence required, the skills required to be a solicitor. And again, we're planning at the moment in terms of consulting on those also, again, probably in the autumn. So in the autumn, there will be two consultations, perhaps running in parallel, one around CPD, where we'll have detailed proposals for a scheme, and another one around the standard of solicitor competence and a framework for it. And, of course, all through that there is the ongoing dialogue with yourselves, which I'll say a little bit more about now in terms of what can you do? How can you be involved? Well, please give us your views, both at the roadshows that the roadshows have just finished, but we will be running future roadshows and other types of events as well, including we plan to run future webinars as well, which will drill down in a little bit more detail into the specific topics such as the skills to be a solicitor or what kind of CPD system is best. On a more formal level, and I will say it would be delighted to see you at those roadshows as well. I really enjoyed the interactions that we had with people there at the roadshows around the country, and the input that we had from them was remarkable and of very high quality. Secondly, we will be actually issuing, of course, the consultations, and again, we'd be delighted if you can send us responses to those. And finally, we'll have an ongoing online debate in terms of the web address that you'll see there is what we call our microsite. It's an area of the SRA website, and but it's very much, I think, got its own look and feel in terms of being more interactive. It encourages blogging. It's linked in through Twitter. And it's also meant to be a contact point for us. So it's very much a progressing, evolving, and interactive area of our website, and we hope you'll use it. We hope you'll find it interesting. So what we're going to do now, in terms of that, brings us to the end of the presentation. And what we're going to do now is take a break for a couple of minutes. Also, what we're going to do is just ask you to do a final poll, which is, the final poll is really, it should be coming up on your screens, and it's about what is the best way that we can inform you of the changes to Training for Tomorrow, and how would you like to interact with us? So in terms of options, we've got the roadshows that I've mentioned, which we run on a local basis. So we've run them so far in places like Bristol, Manchester, Newcastle, Cardiff. And again, that's very much us coming to meet you and listen to you where you are. Then we've got webinars such as today. We've got potential question-answer sessions on Twitter. We've got discussion groups on LinkedIn for those of you who use LinkedIn. We've got feeds to Twitter to update you. We could also run regular email updates. We could look at running a conference on Training for Tomorrow during 2014. Obviously, there would be just one conference, and that would probably be a 2-day, perhaps a weekend event. We could run a magazine, which would run every few months, or we'd like you to say what other possibilities there are. So very much that will be there on your screens now. We're going to take a couple of minutes break, but please do give us your views on what you think are the best ways we can actually listen to you and hear your views. Thank you. We'll just be breaking for a couple of minutes now, and then we'll come back and I will be answering the questions that you've submitted, or as many of them as I can within the allotted time that we have. Thank you very much for participating. I'll be back with you in just 2 minutes. Hello, it's Tim Pearce here, returning for the second part of this SRA, Solicitors Regulation Authority webinar on Training for Tomorrow. And what we're going to cover in this session is the questions which have been asked, and I will seek to answer those questions. And I think the first question that's come up is how many people are actually listening to this webinar. The records we have for online are 43 participants, and I think one of the reasons perhaps for that figure not being higher is that this webinar is very much something that we are running as you may know, as a mop-up session for the road shows that we've run, and also to actually give those who may not have an opportunity to attend the roadshows opportunity to participate in this webinar. So therefore, we that's basically the numbers are not tremendously high, but I think that's probably the reason for it, and we have seen a lot of people at the road shows, so that's I think that overall is still a pretty healthy position. We're personally very pleased with the level of interest in this initiative of ours. What I'm going to do now, just before launching into the answers to the other questions, is publish the poll results to the final question in terms of informing you of Training for Tomorrow developments. And I think a couple of interesting things out of this. If you've got the figures on your screen now, you'll see that there is a strong preference, or a large number of people who are keen on further webinars. That's certainly something we will very much take into account. There is also a reasonable level of interest in regular email updates. This is something that we are looking at already within the office, and it's something where we may well be developing something whereby we use, you have the opportunity to subscribe to a mailing list and receive updates, and also, of course, engage in any dialogue via email with us that you wish. And finally, I would say there's, according to the figures I've got, 2 people have actually suggested other means of communication. I don't think the webinar format allows you to set those out on screen, as it were, but if you've got views on other ways that we could be in touch with you, then please do contact us at the address that you can see on the screen there, t4t@sra.org.uk, what we call our Training for Tomorrow inbox, and we will certainly take account of that, because we are looking for the best ways to reach out to people and to listen to them, and if you've got suggestions, that's excellent. So, right, now we'll move on to the questions that we've received. The first question is, what do you see as the ongoing role of the Higher Education Academy, and also the relevance of QAA benchmarks in this process? Now, what we would very much see is that the universities and academic providers obviously have close links with the Higher Education Academy, and very much are looking to the QAA benchmarks, the standards that are set in terms of the quality of education provision. Those bodies are very much, the universities, the degree and education providers are clearly very much in relationship with and responsive to Higher Education Academy and the framework of standards that surrounds higher education. That's not something that we want to duplicate wherever we can avoid it. Because the universities are already regulated to high standards, we believe that our approach in terms of regulating universities should be very much only what is necessary to achieve our standards. And what I would very much suggest, in terms of anyone who's interested in this question, please look at our current consultation on the website, the regulation review consultation, because you will see that there are a number of proposals there relating to our relationship to the academic education providers, and the way that our regulations can be lighter touch and not to duplicate the requirements that already, the standards effectively that those institutions are already achieving because of their relationship with the Higher Education Academy and the QA benchmarks. So it's very much what we're saying here is we would not seek to duplicate or add extra burdens over and above what is already on institutions in terms of the requirements, the standards they already work to, which shows, a level of academic excellence which obviously attracts students from around the world. hopefully that answers that, but by all means, and this goes for any of these questions, if those who are asking the questions want to know further detail, please, by all means, contact us through the T4T inbox, and we can have a further dialogue and explore the question a lot further. I'm now going to move on to the next question, which is, please comment on the role, if any, it says, of virtual law offices in the future as the SRA sees that role. Virtual law offices in terms of being able to practice remotely and provide services through electronic means is very much a part of practice already. The concept of a virtual office is a debatable one in terms of where actually the legal service is provided, at the point of receipt or at the point of provision. But I think the key thing is that obviously a legal service will be provided within legal context that's provided, that is created by the jurisdiction in which the relevant law is being dealt with. So although a lawyer may actually be, for instance, based in another country, they may have an office elsewhere, if they're providing legal services, within the context of English law, that is still very much a service of English law, and it's very much something which we would be involved in regulating, in terms of the entities, the actual business vehicles and individuals that we regulate. So, very much in terms of, yes, this is within our remit, but secondly also, in terms of facilitating that, of giving the solicitor of the future the skills to practice in different ways and not be tied to old models, that is very much something that we have had indeed coming through as a theme from the roadshows, is the need for solicitors to be able to practice law very much in an online and global environment. So in terms of looking at it from the point of view of competence standards, it's very much part of what we're doing, and it's something that we will be looking at through our fieldwork that we're doing to develop a standard of solicitor competence. So many professions these days deliver services in online environments, and solicitors are no different. So in terms of that question, I think that probably covers broadly the question, but again, please feel free to engage in correspondence with me through the T4T inbox for further discussion on it. Next question we have is, will you publish the results of the polls from this webinar and presumably the roadshows? And very much a resounding yes to that. What we are looking at doing is, in addition to the blogs that we have published about each of the roadshows, we are also going to publish on the Training for Tomorrow website before Christmas. We will be putting out a summary of all our activity for this year, so that will include going back to the publication of the LETR report and then the policy statement. It will cover the actual work that we're doing in terms of consultation, so the publication of the consultational regulation review, and it will also cover our stakeholder engagement activities, and we hope to be able to put in some detailed information about, for instance, the different locations that we've run the roadshows in, the breakdown of the participants there in terms of, legal practitioners, academics, trainees, students, and so on, and also a lot of detail about the key questions that have come up. If you look at the blogs, you will see that each roadshow has often had a slightly different theme or a different, slightly different focus of discussion, and again, we want to reflect that so that we hope to publish an awful lot of detail about what went on at the roadshows and at this webinar, the questions that were asked, and the breakdown of the participants. So, right, now the next question relates to global law firms and UK law firms operating cross-jurisdictionally in the UK. the review will definitely be taking account of and developed in dialogue with the Law Society of Scotland. And the PAT requirements and the new CPD requirements, which the Law Society of Scotland introduced in 2011, are very much on our horizon. I have personally had a couple of meetings with Law Society of Scotland already, and we keep in close correspondence and dialogue, because obviously we recognise that there is cross-jurisdictional practice in the UK and that Scotland is a very important legal market. So for that reason, that's very much part of our horizon, as is our relationship, of course, with Northern Ireland, and also within the EU as well, that we are a member of the CCBE, and we are very much see ourselves as, a UK jurisdiction, but also as a European and a jurisdiction with a global marketplace. So hopefully that covers that question, which is quite timely, as I think this brings us, it's the time now is, I think, half past, so that brings us to the end of this webinar. I'd like to thank you all very, very much for participating, and it's been great to have this level of interest through both the roadshows and the webinars. Thank you for your questions as well. Feel free to inbox us with more questions, and as I say, look out for in a week or so's time, where we hope to be publishing the quite a lot of detail from this webinar and from the road shows, so that you can see it all there. Don't forget to actually download the content of this slide as a PDF if you want to look at it further. And also, don't forget to take our survey. Again, that's on the documents and links over on the right-hand side. So there's the survey in terms of your satisfaction with what we've provided for you today and how we could improve. We are keen to deliver, as good quality possible webinars in the future. And finally, I'd just like to thank you, and there will be one further detail following for those who are claiming CPD. But thank you very much.